Thank you for joining us to today's session for the Governor Talk series in the 2024 annual meetings. My name is Alfred Kammer. I'm the Director of the European Department. I'm very happy to have with me and warmly welcome Governor Andriy Pyshnyy from the National Bank of Ukraine. Governor Pyshnyy has been leading the National Bank since October 2022 during a time of immense challenges due to Russia's war in Ukraine. His tenure has been marked by severe challenges and exceptional uncertainty. Despite this, Ukraine has achieved notable macroeconomic and financial sector stability and just last week completed a fifth review under the IMF program. There's much to discuss today, and I will start with several questions regarding the NBU's response to the ongoing conflict and the lessons learned, which may be useful for other central banks operating in a more uncertain environment in the future. A quick note on logistics. Each of you will find a headset for interpretation. Please switch to channel 1 for English and channel 6 for Ukrainian. Governor, you want to start us off before I start with our first questions.
Доброго дня. Дякую, Альфред. Дякую Міжнародному валютному фонду за можливість сьогодні бути в цій залі. Серед друзів, серед партнерів, серед тих, хто підтримує Україну, і представити Національний банк і наші результати, поділитися нашим досвідом. Мені видається, що він може бути корисним для керівників центральних банків, адже дійсно в умовах невизначеності перебуває не лише Україна. В Україні ця невизначеність безпрецедентна. Але як я часто чую тут,
We often hear here at annual meetings, we say that uncertainty becomes gradually our new reality. So thank you for this opportunity.
Andriy, first question. You have often mentioned that in a crisis you do not rise to the level of your expectations, but you fall back on the level of your preparedness. As the war continues at a high intensity, how has the NBU's preparedness supported the country, and how is the National Bank of Ukraine continually adapting its policies and practices to address the evolving nature of Ukraine's challenges?
Дякую, Альфреде, за це запитання.
Thank you, Alfred, for this question. In fact, it's not my phrase that in crisis you do not raise to the level of your expectations, but you fail to the level of your preparedness. This is a motto of the Navy, of the Marines of the United States. To a certain extent, the conditions in which we now function and operate are very similar to the military conditions. Now, you see, I have a necktie and a suit, but now there is a war in Ukraine for 973 days. And to understand how important it is to do the exercise of preliminary preparedness and training that will allow you to implement your mandate under any conditions. And this phrase, under any conditions and circumstances, this is a key statement which is in the foundation of the National Bank operation in the conditions of the wartime. We have to be prepared to any scenario. I will try to recall and describe chronologically things that were done by the central bank to show you which preparation we made and which conclusions we made. On the 24th of February 2022, the skies fell on our heads, fell with Russian missiles. This is, a nightmare of a central banker. At one point of time, all shocks and risks materialized, all negative alternative scenarios, anything you can imagine. Panic. At the same time, enormous number of population started to move, internally displaced people, migrants. a large part of territory was occupied. Since the start of the full-scale invasion, as you know, Ukraine lost 1/3 of its GDP and 20% of its territory. Migration flow was the highest since World War II. Europe has not seen such migration since World War II. The National Bank on that day activated the package of anti-crisis measures. At that point of time, the NBU team, I was not the governor, so I want to merit the preparedness and determination of the previous team. They introduced the package of limitations on capital movement. They also introduced restrictions on cash withdrawal transactions for the population. At the same time, there was a clear communication that cashless transactions are provided everywhere. This was probably the first war ever where you could pay with, Apple Pay. The access to cash was expanded as much as possible. You could get cash anywhere. We had to tame the panic and anxiety. We had to give people the understanding that they can get access to their funds. That was important to keep the situation under control. Operational stability was important. We adapted a number of decisions related to credit risk. We introduced a credit holiday, this anti-crisis package is frequently compared to the tourniquet. Tourniquet is a mean to stop critical bleeding. Each Ukrainian military has this tourniquet, and this tourniquet was this plan of anti-crisis measures that was applied by the Ukrainian Central Bank to stop bleeding and to stabilize the situation. And it worked. Next important thing which was done by the NBU is monetary support of the government, because at the moment when the full-scale invasion started, it generated a huge need in finance. The National Bank, 2 weeks after the start of the full-scale invasion, made a decision on monetary finance of the budget. Yes, it was precisely calibrated. It was channeled properly and used properly, but at that moment it was crucial that the National Bank becomes a central bank of the country that suffers from the full-scale invasion and aggression. $12 billion of monetary finance were provided in 2022. Together with the monetary finance, there was a shock related with activation of inflation processes, and we will talk about it a bit later, because this is also important thing, and we work on it with your team, and we have something to share with you. Monetization allowed to finance budget needs until we agreed finally on the package of international financial support. The package of international financial support, Ukraine started to receive it in the end of summer 2022. Before that, the National Bank took measures to support budget needs. That was a survival strategy. At the same time, no tourniquet, no anti-crisis measures can be permanent. At some point of time, they harm more than help. And the National Bank, from autumn 2022, started tackling the consequences of these anti-crisis measures and started gradually to recover normality. We worked hard to resume operation of transmission mechanism. We worked on resumption of domestic debt market. We worked on so that the banks that absorbed the first shock of the war, so that they could start building new operational model in the conditions of the full-scale war. This is how our power banking project was born, that provides for creation of the nationwide network that can operate even in the conditions of no power supply and no connection, no communication. The power banking protocol was activated again this year when there were massive blackouts in March due to missile attacks on our energy infrastructure. Thus, having understood that the consequences of the full-scale invasion were taken under control, the budget received the required finance, we reached a really clear track of relations and the negotiation process with the International Monetary Fund. Let me recall that in October 2022, when I took the office, we started the negotiations on opening of the monitoring program with participation of the Executive Board of the IMF. This monitoring program was completed successfully, and in December 2022, we started designing the extended fund facility. In March 2023, it took effect. These are important milestones that allowed us to focus not only on what was bad, but to work on the plan that would allow to mitigate the risks and would allow to plan and forecast further steps of our cooperation. Therefore, my key message: you have to be prepared. Anything can happen. And this preparedness and the experience gained by the National Bank of Ukraine has a very high price. And thus I always openly offer to my colleagues and partners, and every meeting we offer technical assistance of our national bank. We can share our experience, and you can make your contingency or business continuity plans more realistic. The results of our work of this first period, the inflation that was caused by the first shock of the war and monetization of the budget, reached 26% in 2022. While in 2023, through our cooperation with you, we managed to tame it down to 5%.
Of preparedness. And this was not the first crisis experienced by Ukraine over the last decade. So that helped set you up. Fast forward to last Friday, an hugely important milestone for Ukraine, completing successfully the 5th review under the IMF program, never achieved under any IMF program with Ukraine before, and that under extraordinary circumstances. How was this possible?
Here I want to recognize and to thank the entire team of the International Monetary Fund. Indeed, on the 18th of October, the board of IMF approved the results of the 5th review. Even in the times of peace, Ukraine has never gone that far in its relations with the IMF. It means that together with you, we did incredible job. First and foremost, we properly designed the program. And here I want to appreciate the International Monetary Fund for their flexibility, for their deep understanding. I recall our discussions at the end of 2022 and in the early 2023 when we were looking for design of the program, and when we developed the program of finance in the conditions of unprecedented impact of exogenous factors on the country. This required some reconsideration of policies, and it opened the doors not only to Ukraine as the country that suffered from exogenous factors provoked by the full-scale invasion, but also for other countries, because exogenous countries can be triggered by natural disasters. And the IMF changed its position and opened its program for Ukraine. I often compare our cooperation with the fund with a keystone on which today the entire package of financial support to Ukraine is based. And it was formed thanks to the program generated in March 2023, and which was reviewed for the fifth time in October 2024. And I do hope it's not the last review, because we are very determined to achieve the sixth review and the seventh review and further on with the same level of success, because we understand how critically important it is for Ukraine to maintain the support of international financial institutions, and how important it is for Ukraine to move towards reforms despite the war. I can't name any sphere, neither social, nor political, nor law enforcement, that would not be subject to profound structural reforms these days. I often compare what is happening now in the country, it's like a surgery on the open heart to the person who runs a marathon. And this surgery, thanks to the fact that fantastic experts are on our side, and your strong team, and we became much more mature over this period of war, and so far we succeed. And I hope that we will follow the same way and will be successful in our next further reviews, because it changes the country to better despite the war, and this makes us stronger, because the objective of the program is to create macro-financial stability that will boost Ukraine's capability to resist and will ensure our development despite the war. So I want to thank you. We are successful because we are together.
I think what you have been emphasizing is important. This is a macro stabilization program, plus at the same time a program with deep structural reforms. And the idea, of course, is not to just manage through this war, but to set Ukraine up for a very strong medium-term trajectory and successful EU accession. And I think that's important never to forget about this program. It has this medium-term and long-term target as well. But now move to some of the issues you have been dealing with successfully with the banking system and with the financial system. And I'm thinking here about how you managed financial stability risks, how you were monitoring banking developments during an ongoing war, and were dealing with those issues. And at the same time, I should say, the governor was always very keen, again, on long-term objectives and not just on the short-term stabilization, by continue to focus on financial inclusion, because that will be an important element for the future. So you kept both of these objectives in mind. So what did you do?
Thank you for this question. Indeed, we pay a lot of attention to, so that our actions are aimed not only at absorbing the shocks and solution of short-term issues, but also to build it in medium term and long term. This is a very important exercise in the conditions of the war and uncertainty. The National Bank of Ukraine, all in all, selected now a policy to shrink the area of uncertainty. All economic agents and population exist in an unprecedented uncertainty, which is to a great extent generated by the war and its intensiveness. For the National Bank, it was important to build its communication on very clear strategic guidelines. You know, there is a phrase of Eisenhower who said that a plan is nothing, planning is everything. In early 2023, in the conditions of the war, we started the process of strategic planning. We realized that we are in the conditions of uncertainty, but we had a benchmark. We had a kind of stability, at least in the issues of cooperation with the International Monetary Fund. We had a program that inspired us, and we started to build our policy given the conditions in which we existed, but with understanding of the mid-term prospects. And we revised the strategy of the National Bank of Ukraine. That was the important exercise that brought together the entire team of the bank and focused all our intellectual capacity to see the mid-term and long-term trajectory. So then the strategy of development of the NBU turned into the strategy of the financial sector, and other stakeholders joined it. The National Commission for Stock Markets, Ministry of Finance, and Financial Stability Council, which operates in Ukraine. Then we developed a strategy together with your team, the strategy of FX liberalization. The strategy that provided for gradual and very clear steps, the list of preconditions under which the National Bank would resume normal operation of the market. This strategy assumed gradual lifting of restrictions on capital movement that were imposed at the start of the war. It provided for transition from the exchange rate peg to the managed flexibility. In mid-term, it provided for return to the inflation targeting, because at the start of before the war, the National Bank functioned in the inflation targeting mode and had a floating rate. When the war started, the NBU was obliged to fix the rate and refuse from inflation targeting. And it was very important for us to recover this element because they made us stronger. And we built this process on a strategic document which was communicated to economic agents to shrink their area of uncertainty. I frequently communicate with various associations. Their number is incredible. Once a month, I meet the CEOs of the largest systemically important banks. I mean myself and the board, the key staff. I have regular meetings with international business associations. I do it to clarify and explain our position. And this position always in its basis has the explanation that our today's action matters in the future. And we always explain economic agents our aim. And in our opinion, it reduces the area of uncertainty and increases confidence in our policy. Therefore, the strategy is based on the fact that the policy in the conditions of unprecedented uncertainty is based on the documents that describe our steps, which gives the understanding of preconditions subject to which we will make decisions. And this was our deliberate conscious strategy. Now we are talking about the lending resumption strategy, because even our program is aimed at creation of additional capacity of Ukraine to generate our internal resource to become stronger as far as it is possible. The banking system is in a good shape. It was in a good shape before the full-scale invasion, and it allowed it to absorb the shock quickly and efficiently, and it remains in a good shape. It is operating profitable, and its capitalization levels are higher than the minimal standards. We removed all the easing in our regulations introduced at the start of the war, and now we operate in the pre-war mode. Moreover, we started to implement the system of European standards because Ukraine is on its way to EU accession, and this process means a lot of difficult reforms, and we do not postpone them by after the war. We are implementing them now. We see that the banking system recovers its lending appetites. We see that the banking system starts to understand its role in the situation of the war, and the banking system itself generates the respective solutions that allow us to become stronger. For example, recently, 20 largest Ukrainian banks signed the memorandum on finance of energy infrastructure recovery, because in March 2024, our energy sites were destroyed by Russia. So the banks made a market pattern that was communicated to the society, and they said, we are ready to support recovery of power generation. And this is a very mature position. I really like it. It is based on the understanding that solving the problems of today, we need to keep in mind what will happen tomorrow. We believe in our victory. We believe that tomorrow should be better than today.
Been working under exceptional uncertainty, and when we're looking at the world ahead, many people are saying that uncertainty is the new certainty. And central banks have been working in an environment of COVID, deglobalization, cyber attacks, all of these kind of things. In an environment like that, what lessons should they draw from your experience on working under exceptional uncertainty? What I'm thinking about, central banks were model-based. We had to go away from that. What is the trade-off between flexibility and stability when you're looking at credibility of central bank, which is their main currency of operation?
The main lesson is even recorded in our strategy. The mission of the National Bank was not changed. Our mission is to ensure price and financial stability, support economic policy of the government. But as the whole staff agreed when we formulated our strategy, the mission statement was completed with one phrase: we do it under any conditions. Regardless of how big the uncertainty is, we as a national bank must perform our mandate under any conditions. This is why we work on strengthening of operational stability. We work on resilience assessment of the banking system. We calibrate and estimate all possible scenarios. We develop the system of protocols. We communicate our decisions and initiatives, provide explanations to the banking system. We also not only banking, but also non-banking financial system. We do everything to work under any conditions. An important factor in this situation, where is the front line between this flexibility and stability, and how to be efficient in the conditions of uncertainty. The second response is trust. The better we operate, the higher level of expectations we generate, the higher is the price of failures and mistakes. To a certain extent, we, are the hostages of our performance. And this is not a problem for us. This is a challenge, and it's additional motivation, because the level of trust and confidence is something that allows us to navigate through these dark waters of the uncertainty caused by the full-scale invasion quite efficiently. The third factor is cooperation. this is how we revised and rethought that the National Bank is not an ivory tower. It's a very responsible institution that has the expertise, that is institutionally capable, and its ideology is based on independence. It has a clear mandate and high level of trust, but also accountability. And this accountability means that we have to build a system of cooperation with all stakeholders. For me, it meant that we had to be open to communication and dialogue. Let me tell you about my first business day. As soon as the parliament appointed me to the position, I entered my office and asked my colleagues to make 2 appointments. The first call was with you, Alfred, and the second with the finance minister. And that our first call with you and Gavin, among other things, had a very symbolic meaning for me, because that was my system of priorities: to build stable relations with international financial partners and to build proper cooperation inside the country. After the conversation with the Minister of Finance, we developed a concept that allowed us to present a clear position that proved to be efficient, because the decision of the board of IMF on monitoring program, we allowed us to move towards extended finance. And these were very important elements of cooperation. I spent a lot of time to communicate with the Ukrainian parliament, to communicate with the government, to explain our decisions. For me, the independence of the central bank is the objective. But at the same time, for the entire team of the National Bank, it's a very powerful resource. And we find it necessary to use it to build stable relations with the circle of our partners, with internal stakeholders, with the Ukrainian society, with economic agents. Because coming back to the issue of trust, this is a very important element of performance of the National Bank. And yes, I believe that those who say that uncertainty is our new reality, they're right. And we have to look for new meanings, for the central bank in this uncertainty. We even had to expand the mandate to some extent. And expansion of the mandate was efficient. I will not get into details now, but sanctions policy is a new reality. And in many respects, the sanctions policy should be on the radars of central banks as one of the factors, because the fragmentation caused by the events developing today at the global level is already there. It's not the future, it's our reality.
Issue of cooperation, coordination, and I think that is one of the reasons we see the strong performance of Ukraine under the program. And one difficult part of this coordination in every fund program is the coordination between the Ministry of Finance and an independent central bank, because of different objectives, but crucially that it takes place. So how has this cooperation with the cooperation and coordination with the Ministry of Finance been working?
Thank you for emphasizing this. Coming back to, well, 2.5 years ago, I understand that was probably one of the key factors of our successful cooperation. The meeting I had on the first day of my work, just after our call, it lasted a few hours, and with the finance minister we discussed very openly the entire range of issues and challenges we faced. I understand the mandate of the finance minister. I heard from them understanding of the mandate of the central bank. At the same time, we are responsible for maintenance of financial stability. We have to find a new model of cooperation that would not undermine the achievements of the national bank and would not create problems for the finance ministry and would allow us to move forward. Then there was a whole range of solutions that proved efficient and that allowed to resume the domestic debt market operation. And there was a number of decisions made by the finance ministry that demonstrated to economic agents that this new level of cooperation is a stable model. And over these 2 years, thanks to international financial support and resumed domestic debt market and activation of economic processes, and it's worth mentioning that in 2023, despite the war, Ukrainian economy grew by more than 5%. The inflation reduced a great deal, and we moved to the mode of easing of our monetary policy. Therefore, our cooperation proved to be clear, and even sometimes I could see that it created proper expectations for the Ukrainian business because they could see how effective it was. This cooperation allowed us to get rid of the monetary finance of budget deficit in 2023. We avoided monetization of budget deficit this year. And these are not simple decisions. It's easy to say, but the war continues in the war, and it generates additional needs. It keeps generating challenges and shocks. Building of cooperation with you and inside the country, understanding of priorities, gives us the feeling of result and common objective. And I hope that this year and next year will be the years of cooperation for us as well, because we become more mature in our decisions and it helps overcome new challenges we face. I appreciate our cooperation, and I believe this is one of the key factors that we manage to achieve the results we want. And successful fifth review of the program is an evidence of that.
To you for one or two questions. One final question to you, Andriy. A very difficult job, lots of volatility from day to day, super tough. What inspired you most during the time to keep you going?
People. I recall February 2022. This was an emotionally difficult period. I just tried to remember every face, every conversation, every event. When I started working at the NBU, became the governor of the National Bank, I felt, this team. We made a strategic session, and I felt that this team can generate the prospects. They can take responsibility. They have vision. Our military people inspire me because till now, and today is the day number 973 of the war, they hold our sky. While I'm here in Washington, they defend my family. I really like some moments when, because we are all in this very anxious atmosphere of the war we managed to create. For example, when Kristalina Georgieva visited the National Bank, she could see a room for children in the National Bank. Mothers bring their children there because, there could be blackouts and they don't want to leave children behind at home. I love when there are children, running in the corridors of the central bank. They create the atmosphere that gives us the feeling of happiness. It's like, the sun ray. And over some period of time, I see that these things inspire us. That's why my response is people. For the National Bank, this is the understanding of this humanity and solidarity is being transformed in the fact that we build and banking institutions support us. We want to build the most inclusive financial system in the world because Ukraine is a country of veterans. It's a country of people with disabilities caused by the war. Therefore, we think that we want financial system to be as accessible as possible, both territorially and informationally and financially. And this inclusiveness is one of the principles, Alfred, which is now in the DNA of the National Bank of Ukraine. That's why, yes, I am inspired by people.
Andriy, so any questions? Yeah, we have one over there.
Hi, Governor Pyshnyy. Thank you so much. My name is Matthew Kendrick. I'm with G0 Media. You spoke about the panic and the difficulties in the early days of being in this very stressful situation. And you also spoke about advising other countries, offering this advice to create their own preparedness plans. I'm curious how you would advise other countries to prepare with, say, corruption or embezzlement that might arise out of these crisis situations and what Ukraine did in its case from the central bank. Thank you.
Thank you for this question, but it would be difficult, to put it in 1 minute. It's a whole set of measures. The system is built on communication. In many respects, it is necessary that the central bank at this crisis moment is present in the information environment. You have to understand what kind of information environment will be, which channels of information will be available in this first stress moment. The important factor is that you have to understand that no plan you design will function if it's not implemented by people. Therefore, the first value for any central bank is its staff. Because these people, same as the rest of people in the country, feel anxiety. They see the missiles, they are worried about their families, their safety, and you have to give them the feeling of safety. That's why in the National Bank of Ukraine, we have separate premises that allow not only the staff to be there, but the staff together with families. This is the protocol, we call it shelter protocol. That's why in the National Bank of Ukraine, we have children rooms where parents can bring their children, not to worry that they will stay at home during air raids. Because, the heart of parent is where the child is, and we want our staff to be efficient. That's why people, your staff is the key, and they have to feel that they're protected. Second, training. Any protocol which is on paper and not tried and tested several times will not operate. This is the rule from which we started, that in crisis you do not raise the level of expectations but fall to the level of your training. For the fourth, on the first day people tested whether they can make payments and get funds, whether their finances were secure. And it was important for the central bank to demonstrate that they did have access and that everything functioned. As soon as they made sure that it worked, the panic tamed. But yes, this first effect of the full-scale invasion and the war is uncomparable to anything. Because, even routes, the roads looked like, some horror movie. 16 million Ukrainians had to move. And a big part of them were internally displaced. That's an enormous number of people. Next, we are talking about the population, but there is important factor to preserve economic potential, companies, enterprises. In Ukraine, there was active program of relocation of production capacities. The National Bank developed a range of measures that allowed banks to provide their borrowers with the lending holidays, credit holidays, so they could not pay for some time, and they had the feeling their business is not lost. So this is a whole set of measures, but it is important to communicate and to remain visible. People have to see the central bank. They have to know that the bank knows what to do and that their funds are safe. And never forget about the staff. There is also a range of measures related with operational stability. I don't think it's worth focusing, but I can confirm that the central bank is open to provide any consultancy, technical assistance. We are happy to share our experience because it's priceless.
For your insights of managing through this terrible time for Ukraine, maintaining macro stability and the economic backbone for the economy and the functioning of the economy, but also to prepare the foundations for a bright future for Ukraine, for the people of Ukraine. And a big round of applause, please, for Andriy.
Я на сам кінець хочу сказати.
At the end, I just want to thank you for this opportunity, for this communication, for your partnership, for flexibility and wisdom. And please stay with Ukraine. We need you. And you need us. Thank you.